Hey guys, today I want to quickly look with you at something called GCF and LCM. And we haven't really talked about this. We have, but we haven't just called it by what it is. Um, so when we think about fractions and we think about finding common denominators, that's where GCF and LCM come into play. So like I said, this won't be a new idea. We're just finally putting like the vocabulary behind what it is. So I want you to go ahead and title this page in your journal. Let's use G, it would let me write GCF and LCM. Okay? GCF and LCM. We're going to define what those mean in a second because obviously they're like, they stand for something. So I'm making my text box here. So if we start with GCF, GCF means greatest common factor. That's GCF. And LCM is least, we'll keep it the same way, least common multiple is LCM. So that's what those two words stand for. Greatest common factor is GCF, least common multiple is LCM. And we're about to define what those mean. So the greatest common factor, that's when you have two numbers. Usually the numbers are a little on the bigger side. So let's say that we are finding the GCF of, let me get in the text box actually, so we'll go a little bit further down so we don't crowd our notes too much. Can I make the text box, please? Thank you. GCF of, let's do 35 and 56. Okay, so what this means is that we want to find the largest factor that goes into both of these numbers. It has to be the same number. We're looking for the same factor that goes into both 35 and 56. And what we have to do is we have to make, if you'll remember, it's been a long time since we've made them, we have to make these little factor T's. Boop. One here and one here. We need to make it for 35 and one for 56. These are going to help us figure out what the biggest number that they both share. So going through doing our factors, we know that let's see. I'm going to do 1 and 35, right? Obvious one, get that done. You might be thinking of 5 and 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 7. What else we got? 2 doesn't go in because it's not even. 3 doesn't go in. 4 doesn't go in. 5 does. 6 does not. 7 does. 8 does not. 9 does not. 10 does not. Don't believe. 11, no, because 11 goes into 33. 12, no, because it goes into 36. 13, no. 14, no. 15, okay. So I think this is it. 35 has a very sad number of factors. It only has 4 factors. So we know that because 1, 2, 3, 4. So 35 has 4 factors. Let's do 56 now. Hopefully it's a little bit more. 1 and 56, right off the bat. It is even, so we can do 2, and let's see. If 50, half of 50 is 25, half of 6 is 3, so 28. Okay. Let's think. Does 3 go into 56? Well, 3 goes into 60 20 times. And this is 4 less than that, so no, 3 does not. Does 4 go into 56? It actually totally does. Think about it. 4 goes into 40 10 times. And then from 40 to 56 is 16. So 10 plus the other 4 to get 4 times 4 is 16. That's 14. So 4 times 14 goes into 56. What else? You probably know a factor pair that goes into 56. If you're thinking 7 and 8, then you should be right. 7 and 8. And that might be it. So we can see that there's a lot of more factors for 56. But what we're looking for when we're looking for the greatest common factor, we're looking for that number that they both share, the largest number they both share. Of course, they're both going to have a 1, right? Duh. But we're looking for whatever number is bigger than that. Sometimes the greatest common factor is 1. But if we can find a bigger factor, then that's what the greatest common factor will be. So look at both sides. Is there a number that they both have on both sides? The biggest one that they both have? You probably see it. It's 7. 7 here and 7 here. So they both have a 7 on as their factors. So the greatest common factor of 56 equals 7. That's it. That's as simple as finding greatest common factor. So please make sure you have all this written down because I'm about to move on and do least common multiple. So usually you find the greatest common factor when you're trying to simplify a fraction. So remember, if you have like those fractions that like the numerator and denominator are like big numbers, and you're looking at your star answer choices and you're like, I don't see my answer here. Like, I know my fraction's correct. Why is my answer not here? It's probably because you need to simplify it, right? It's probably that you need to simplify it. Let's say you were doing a star test and you got, I know this is kind of ridiculous, but you got 35 over 56 as your answer choice. And then you're sitting there and you're looking at like the answer choices and you don't see this. You don't see 35 over 56. What you would need to do, what the trick is that you would need to divide the top and the bottom by 7, because 7 is the greatest common factor. And what we would end up getting is the simplified fraction. So 35 divided by 7 equals 5. Boop. And 56 divided by 7, what does that equal? Yep, if you look over here, I mean, you clearly see it's 7 times 8, right? So you might not see 35 over 56 as an answer choice, but I totally bet you'd see 5/8 as an answer choice, right? So it doesn't mean you necessarily did the work wrong. Remember, I don't want you on the STAR test looking at the answer choices, not seeing your fraction and thinking, oh man, I did it wrong. No, not necessarily. It just might mean you need to simplify it. You need to find the equivalent fraction. 35 over 56 is equal to 5/8. We just needed to simplify it by dividing the top and the bottom number by their greatest common factor. So that's why we find greatest common factors, okay? It's used mostly for simplifying numerators and denominators of fractions. Okay, so I want you to have that written down too. I guess I should leave it. I put it all back. But I'm about to move on and talk about least common multiple. Okay. All right. So if you need to pause the video, go ahead and pause. But I am going to kind of like delete this so that I can use this workspace again. I'm limited working on a laptop. Well, wasn't trying to turn it red, so let's fix that. All right. Oh my gosh. Why are you doing this? So let's talk about least common multiple now. Least common multiple is where we're finding, we're taking two numbers and we're finding the kind of smallest number least, right? Smallest number that they'll both multiply into. That sounds confusing, so let me give you an example. Let's do the LCM text box. Let me type in it. Oh. My font was great. LCM of, let's say 8 and 12, maybe. So let's say you have like 8 and 12 as your denominators, right? Let me give you an example. You're adding fractions, and you have one fraction is like 1/8, and the other fraction is 5/12. In this case, this is why we would find the least common multiple, okay? This is when we would find the least common multiple. We need to find a number that both 8 and 12 go into. 8 and 12 go into. So how you find this is, honestly, I just start listing off the factors. Like, I make a factor list. So 8, what are all the factors of 8? Let's think. Or, not factors, I'm so sorry. Multiples of 8. What are all the multiples of 8? Well, 8, right? 8's a multiple of 8. You always start at the number itself because 1 times 8 is 8. And then what's 2 times 8? 16. 3 times 8? 24. You're just adding 8 each time, right? Easy peasy. So you just list out the multiples. And I mean, like, I usually go to like 5, 6, 7, 8 multiples just to start and see if I can find anything in there. So let's do 5. 8, 16, 24, then it would be 32, then it would be 40, and then it would be 48. Easy peasy, right? You know your multiples. Now let's do the multiples of 12 right underneath it. So 12. All the multiples of 12, well, always starts with 12, the number itself. And then 12 plus 12, 24. And then plus another 12 would be 36. And then plus another 12 would be 48. Plus another 12 would be 60. Okay, so this is not a bad list. Look at these numbers. There's actually 2 times that the numbers overlap. Look at the list. Do you see where there's the same number on both lists? Yep. There is a 24 and 48. So both of these would work as denominators for our fractions, but let's remember what the actual term is called. It's called least common multiple, least. So we want to find the one that's smaller. We want to find the least common multiple. So that would be the 24. We don't want to use the 48. Why go big? Why go big for no reason? We want to use the 24. So this 24 will become the denominator that we're going to use to replace these fractions with. Like 1/8 is going to turn into something over 24. And 5/12 is going to turn into something over 24. Because once I both get them to 24ths, I can add them. Well, how do I get 8 to 24? I times it times 3. Whenever you do the bottom, you do the top. So that new fraction is 3/24. How do I get 12 to 24? Well, times 2. Multiply the top times 2 as well. 5 times 2 would be 10. Okay, now I have these two numbers, 3/24 and 10/24. So if I add those two together, 13/24. Now, usually at this point, we would simplify and try to divide the top and the bottom down to get like a smaller fraction or a simplified fraction. But I'm looking at 13, and I know 13's prime, so it's not going to reduce. Please make sure everything I've written, you've also written on a full page of your journal, okay? I've kind of had to delete sections and write over it because I'm limited on my space, but you should have all of this in your journals. Go back and pause the video if you need to. All right, I'll see y'all soon.